My name is Adam Starnes here with MAD Security, account manager. I make sure that clients are getting 100% of what MAD Security has promised them and more. I would like to welcome you, as I said before, back to this town hall. If it's your first time joining us, we do this every month, once a month. If it is your second or third or fourth or more times joining us, thank you so much for coming back. We try to give you valuable information. And something I'd like to say here at the beginning is if you've come back or if you've seen these advertisements, but it's not on a subject that you are interested in, please feel free to send us an email, give us a phone call with suggestions of the things that you would like to hear in the next town hall. And it will be my pleasure to see if we can work those into the lineup so that we can make sure we're presenting information to you that is valuable to you. Again, my name is Adam Starnes. I would like to give everyone a moment to get fully logged into this town hall. It looks like we have people still joining, so if you will please give us maybe 90, 120 more seconds and we'll get started today. All right, thank you so much for bearing with me. We're going to go ahead and get started here. For the ones that are just now joining, yes, again, my name is Adam Starnes, account manager here at MAD Security. Make sure that all of our current clients are taken care of. At MAD Security, we do assist with CMMC compliance readiness as well as provide managed security services, things like SOC as a service, vulnerability management, and more. But what we like to do with these town halls is to give you information that could be valuable and educational versus try to sell you something. Again, I had mentioned that if you would like to hear a particular subject, please send us an email, give us a phone call. It'll be my pleasure to, build something around what is going to be valuable to you. And we'll see if we can work those into the lineup. Today in the Q&A session, again, I will have Ms. Jaclyn Jones with us like last time. She is our CRC lead, one of our compliance experts that will be able to answer questions about Virtual Compliance Manager or CMMC in general for you towards the end. So make sure you stick around for that. And today's podcast webinar will be just a little bit different for you, just because what we will do is have a little bit of a shorter presentation and a little bit of a longer Q&A session because we want to make sure that we get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. Submit all of your questions. If we cannot get to them before we are done, we will definitely follow up with you afterwards. So on today's session, we're going to tackle a common misunderstanding in the CMMC compliance journey, which is what happens after you are compliant ready or even after you pass your CMMC level 2 assessment. We're going to talk about why that is not the finish line and how staying compliant is a long-term commitment that needs proper support, monitoring, documentation. You need to do all of these things to avoid costly, unnecessary consequences. Again, make sure you stick around to the end because after we go through the presentation, we are going to have a Q&A session and some free offerings. So what you can expect here is as we walk through the Department of Defense and their expectations on CMMC compliance, we want to teach you how not to fall behind. So CMMC is ongoing. Let's clear something up. It's not just a checkbox. It's security. You don't just get compliant and forget about it. Here's what most people do not realize about CMMC. You must recertify every 3 years. Your executive officer must self-attest annually, confirming that nothing has changed and that you are still fully compliant. And if you sign off saying that you're compliant, but yet you are no longer compliant, you could face False Claims Act penalties. People think they're safe because they've passed the audit once. But staffing changes, systems evolve, technologies come and go, and without constant upkeep, you could fall out of compliance quickly, not even realize it till it's too late. So here's what's expected of you after you become compliant ready, or after you pass your CMMC L2. You must maintain your SPRS score of 110. It's not good enough to hit it, score it once, and then be able to just go on business not having to maintain it. Kind of like a health score in a restaurant. You can't pass the health score without knowing that they're going to come back and regrade you again. You must conduct continuous monitoring of your environment, checking for changes. Whenever you do find changes, did we change the documentation? Did the changes that we make still abide by the CMMC requirements? You must keep all documentation up to date with every major change. Speaking of every major change, let's say you get CMMC audited this year, and then 6 months from now you decide you don't like your SOC provider, so you're going to change your SOC. You're supposed to get CMMC re-audited because you had a major change in your network. That is something that not everyone understands. Compliance is going to require you to complete an annual executive attestation. It's going to have somebody, an executive in your company, sign off saying that, yes, we are still an SPRS score of 110. We're still fully CMMC compliant. Again, could be risky, especially if you don't know or if you've had changes and didn't take the proper measures to make sure you've corrected it. So make sure that your executive is not signing off on that unless they know for sure that they are still compliant. And then you have to be ready for your C3PAO reassessment every 3 years. If your environment changes and your documentation does not reflect it, then you are no longer compliant. You can do all of the right things and not have it documented, and it doesn't count. You're only partially compliant, which means that you don't pass. And if you're signing that attestation every year without verifying, then you're taking a serious risk. So you're asking what can go wrong? Well, here's something we've seen happen. A client passed their audit. They paused their VCM service. They said, we don't need that anymore because we've already passed. That's done with. They made infrastructure changes, hired new IT manager. They moved a few tools around, and they did not update their documentation. And without consistent upkeep, they fell out of compliance. The problem with this is that whenever it came time to be recertified, it was like starting all over again. They're like, well, we passed already. This was all done before. How come it's not the same way still as it was beforehand? But they ended up needing another gap assessment because all the changes they made, new project plans, a full documentation rebuild, which was more time, more money, more stress. It had to basically do it all over again. And this is something that if they decided to stay with the VCM service, that the experts could have advised on as they went, so that either they might have made the choice not to change, or if you want to change, that's okay, but how to change and still remain compliant. So let's talk about how you can avoid all that. If you go through MAD Security's gap assessment process, we're going to deliver everything that you need to start getting compliant ready. Just from the gap assessment, you're going to get an executive summary, which is going to be high level, easy to read for people that don't understand technology. You're going to get a technical report. This is going to be very detailed on all the technicalities and where you have actually met a control, where you've partially met, or where you didn't meet a control. You're going to have remediation suggestions on how you could meet that control and give you a little more detail than the executive summary. You're going to get your project plan, what's going to happen here is it's actually going to break down the solution to how you should approach this into 14 phases to show this is the order that we suggest that we actually accomplish compliance in. You're going to get, of course, your plan of action and milestones. Everybody's heard of the POAM before, which is basically the spreadsheet version of that project plan and required by CMMC. That's documentation that you do have to have. You're going to get a system like data flow mapping. And then, of course, you were going to get your SPRS score. So what VCM actually does is they take the results of that gap assessment. So we finished the gap assessment. We've measured exactly where you're going to be when it comes to compliance readiness, where you stand against that SPRS score range. And we are going to review and validate your documentation, walk you through all of the unmet or partially met controls in plain English. We're going to simplify the control for you, let you know how to interpret it and what it means to really meet that control. We'll help you track your whether it be in people, in the processes, or in the technology. We're going to sit with you during your C3PAO audit as your expert support. You can think of it kind of like a lawyer in a courtroom. Whenever the auditor asks for certain things, we're going to help you actually be able to provide that documentation to them. We typically do this virtually, by the way. We've had some people ask for us to come on site, but typically your auditors come virtually for most of the assessment. So we typically do this virtually, just in case you're wondering. And then we help you maintain evidence for all 110 controls year after year. So in short, VCM turns CMMC into a manageable lifestyle instead of just a one-time sprint. Now you can prepare for CMMC readiness on your own. You can create all of your documentation with our help. So you need to kind of like ask yourself the things like, do you really need VCM? It's like, well, can you create all of the documentation without our guidance? Can you interpret and meet each control, each objective? So you've got the 110 controls, 320 objectives. Can you go through the audit alone? And if you answered yes to all of those things, then wonderful, great. You do not need our VCM service. But if even for just a second, you had a little doubt about one of the questions that I asked, then there's a chance that you're like many others, and you're either a very intelligent person, but CMMC is just not your cup of tea, so you need assistance in that CMMC realm of things. Maybe you do understand most of CMMC, but you need the expert guidance on just a few controls. Or maybe you think you're 99.5% sure that you're an SPRS score of 110, but before you pay $50, $60, $70, $80,000 for an assessment, you want to make sure because something's telling you, I want to verify that I am where I think I am. And no matter where you stand there, VCM could be something for you. So we've talked about VCM and kind of what it does. And we've talked about some people's interpretation thinks that it's something that you can do once and then you're done. But what are the long-term benefits to staying compliant ready? Let me put it this way. CMMC is going to be the cost of doing business in the defense industrial base. If you stay ahead of it, then you're in control. And if you don't, unfortunately, it could cost you a lot. It could be lost contracts, it could be rushed remediations, or it could be even legal action for false attestations. VCM doesn't just help you pass the one time. It's a service designed for you to keep year after year, even after passing the first audit, so that you can remain competitive, you can avoid risk, you can work with all of the primes and companies that you want to work with. It is something that you can use to help maintain compliance year after year. And what is the risk of letting go? Why is that important? Well, first and foremost, let's be completely honest. Let's say that you are an SPRS score of 110 right now and you're ready for the assessment, or let's say you've even passed the assessment. How many hours did you work on that? 100, 200, 300 hours, maybe more, when you think of all the people in your company that you had working on that, preparing for it. You had to organize all your documentation. You had to validate each control. You had to walk through and work on your SSP, your POAM. You had to get all the evidence, all the policies in place. Probably had to schedule a new gap assessment just to make sure that you were still an SPRS score of 110. So now imagine doing that all over again, because you dropped something like a VCM service, you dropped assistance, didn't have anybody there as like an accountability partner, making sure that you're staying compliant, that's going through each of the controls, that is monitoring everything within your network, saying, oh, that change is going to change how you met that control, having that kind of expert guidance. So just because you drop that, imagine you're already going to spend 50,000, 60,000, 80,000, like I talked about before, every 3 years under C3PAO audit. You don't want to fail one of those later on down the road because you failed to remain compliant. Basically, you did it on accident. You just didn't really think about the benefit of actually remaining CMMC compliant ready. You were thinking of it kind of like, I don't want to pay for that service after it's ready. And that's something that we see happen a lot. So, don't feel bad if you're in that boat, if that's happened to you already. It happens. But just think of it like this. Let's say you've got a saltwater swimming pool in the backyard. I'm dealing with this myself, actually, so this is a sensitive spot for me. Let's say you get ready for the first time. Season, you've spent $500 on salt and chemicals, plus whatever the water cost you, plus the full treatment, and now it's clean, it's swimmable, you're set. You're ready to go. You jump in, you have a good time, and then you don't swim as often, maybe once a month. You think it's fine, I'll just let it ride. We haven't made a lot of changes to the pool. We really haven't used it. And for a while it works. But over time, the pool gets cloudy, then it gets gross, then it gets dark green, the algae's taking over. It's disgusting. Now you're looking at another $400 or $500+ just to bring it back. You have to drain it, refill it. I've had a very close person to me have an above ground pool. Just because all you really had to do was treat it, keep the water balanced. That's VCM. It's your biweekly pool check. Your check for your CMMC environment. Because here's the thing, compliance does not rest in the off season. It's easier and it's cheaper in the long run to maintain it than to start over. And unlike your pool, you have to be recertified every 3 years, so the stakes are even higher. So think of it also like running a factory. You wouldn't run production for 3 years without maintenance, right? And the same goes for your CMMC program. Maintenance is part of doing business with the DoD and those who treat it like a lifestyle, not a one-time project. It's the ones that treat it like a lifestyle that win. And guys, as far as talking about maintaining and keeping up to date your compliance, that is going to be the end of today's presentation. Basically, in summary, keep it up. Make sure that you're continuing to work on it even after you're compliant ready, even after you are ready to pass the audit. You've passed the audit. It's behind you now. Make sure that you're maintaining it. This is going to be very well-being and save you a lot of time and money in the future. So as I said, we will get to the Q&A. We want to spend as much time on that today as we need. But first, what I'll talk about here is we do have some giveaways for you today. If you see the links here, whenever you receive this after the town hall, you'll be able to click these links, or you can screenshot, make note now. You have access here to a free CMMC pre-assessment. What this assessment actually does is ask you approximately 31 questions that you'll answer yes, no, or maybe or I'm not sure. And what this is going to be is a quick checklist that'll give us a pretty good idea of where you stand to CMMC compliance readiness. Then the second thing we have for you is the free CMMC Master Bundle download. This is going to have 5 pieces of documentation from everything on what's the importance of being CMMC compliant ready, all the way to how do you build a CMMC enclave and much more. Then the third thing we have on this list is the free CMMC assessment guide. This is actually going to be a guide for going through the certification process and the assessment itself. There's lots of valuable information here. And then the last thing I have here is both my email address and my booking link. If you would like to have a conversation around what you're currently doing for CMMC compliance readiness, maybe you want to talk about where you currently stand, maybe some changes in your network that you want to discuss to see if that would affect your CMMC compliance readiness and or should you be recertified, or if you just want to talk about how we might help you simplify things with CMMC compliance readiness, or maybe provide a technology like SOC SIEM, vulnerability management, penetration testing, and so on to actually help you become compliant ready and secure. It'll be my pleasure to do so. So send me an email there at the astarnes@madsecinc.com or use the booking link to put time directly on my calendar. And that is going to get us today to the live Q&A session. So if you would, go ahead and put your questions in the question chat, and we will get to those. We'll give everybody just a moment. We've already got some questions. Give everybody just a moment to get those questions entered. All right, got a few more coming in here. Just another moment. We will get started. We also had a few of these questions sent in before. All right, we're going to get started here. All right, and I'd like for everyone to welcome Jaclyn Jones again. She's our CRC lead, nice enough to join us today to be able to answer questions for you here live. So again, we will answer as many of these as we can, and then we will follow up with everyone that we could not get to afterwards. All right, Jaclyn, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, perfect. All right, so first question, a gentleman here submitted, if I already passed a CMMC audit, do I really need VCM?
Yeah, so as Adam mentioned, there is a very common misconception that so clients focus so heavily on getting remediation done, getting to the finish line, getting their certification, that they're just ready to move on and don't think that about what really comes after. So there is a CMC control for you to do continuous monitoring, and there's 2 parts of that. There's a security technical configuration, make sure that SIM solutions in place, things like that, stays remains. But then there's also a control review that comes into that. So you have to continuously, or you have to review all the controls over the period of a year to make sure that the implementation of those controls is still effective and behaving the way that you intend for them to be. That's the main thing that we help you guys with VCM. So we review a set number of controls a month. We review the evidence, the implementation, make sure that there's again, there's also like new guidance for controls all the time. So maybe there's a different interpretation of the control. And so that may be a different reason why we have to assess the controls. So we help you with, like I said, evidence review. There's tracking you guys have to do over the course of the year. You have to review policies on an annual basis. There's certain things you have to do every 90 days, every 6 months, every quarter, every year. And those are the things that we help you guys track. So compliance or CMC is not just a one and done after you pass your CMC certification. There is a lot more to it, and it is a lot involved. And most IT teams or most IT staff, especially their smaller staff, do not have the time and resources to do this. So that's how we act as kind of like an extension of your compliance department and take care of these things for you.
Excellent. Yeah, great question, and yeah, Jaclyn, exactly, great answer as well. All right, yeah, we'll go on to the next one. Let's keep it moving here. Next question we had a lady submit. What happens if I sign the annual attestation, but I'm not really compliant?
Yeah, that is a serious thing to do. So basically, when you're entering that score in the SPRS system, you are saying to the government, this is the score that you meet, your requirements that are in place get you to that score. If that score is not accurate, you are at risk of violating and being at risk of the False Claims Act. To where if you actually do have that serious charge against the government puts that serious charge against you, you're in danger of losing contracts, facing penalties, and you will likely face an assessment by the DIBCAC just to verify that your score is correct. So definitely make sure whatever score is in the SPRS system is completely accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. We won't mention names for ill speaking, but we actually just read a news article. Pretty big company had a False Claims Act charge. There's millions of dollars. It's something you don't want to do for sure. Um, yeah, let's just try to avoid that. All right,
Right.
next question here. Can't I just do this internally?
Yeah, you can. There's nothing that says you can't do all these requirements. However, it's a lot, especially if you have like a smaller organization, a smaller IT staff, because again, you have to gather evidence every year for every control. There's 110 controls, but there's also 320 objectives. Many of those objectives require more than one piece of evidence. It's a lot of work. So yes, you can, but would it be simpler if you just, sign up for VCM service? We track this for you. We make sure everything, stays on track. Remediation, make sure this is done according to a schedule. It's a big benefit for you to sign up for VCM.
Absolutely. All right. Let's see. We had another person here ask, so what's the difference between your gap assessment and VCM?
Question. So essentially, those are two completely different things. So what a gap assessment is we go through the process of we determine what your COI scope is, which a lot of clients struggle with. That's the one big the main thing is they don't know what their scope is. We help you guys define what the scope is, and then we collect evidence. We review all of the 110 controls, 320 objectives, and determine to what extent you're actually meeting those requirements. And so as a result of that, we give you reports. We determine what your SPRS score is. And at the end of that, once you get your final reports, that's where the gap assessment ends. What VCM does is you'll get a POM, a plan of action milestones, as part of your assessment, and that will list all of the open controls. So as part of VCM service, we will work through those controls. We will establish a plan, whether we want to tackle 1 point first, whether we want to do 5 points first, or whatever makes us they customize it through the remediation. A lot of clients struggle with what the controls, what the requirements truly mean, and which is very common. And so we have a lot of experience going through helping clients with C3PO certification assessments at this point, and so we know what various assessors have asked our clients to show proof for, and so that's some knowledge that we actually pass on to you as well. So we keep you on track and just make sure you are truly meeting the full requirements as they are to be intended.
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, that's something we've had a lot of people ask. A great question. Thank you so much for asking that, viewer. I want to say, yeah, a lot of places that you've probably talked to or heard from before, if you've talked to people about gap assessments, they'll hand you the gap assessment and say, all right, here you go, and go figure it out. But the VCM service is that hand holding that's actually getting there. Again, some of you people probably figure it out, but you've got your other jobs to do, right? And then we've got the experts on it to make it just a lot more seamless and quicker. And then you've got the expert guidance from people that have been through it, and that's what they eat, live, and breathe all day long. So yeah, that's awesome. Let's see. Gentleman asked, will the BMC on my C3PAO audit?
Yeah, that is part of our CMC or VCM service. So again, as I mentioned, it is virtual because, and the reason for that is your C3PAO certification assessment. A lot of people don't realize that. Most of the times those are virtual, except for the one day that they are required to come on site and assess a set number of controls physically in person. Other than that, it's likely going to be virtual anyway. And so we do provide assistance, and that is done virtually.
Excellent. And yeah, what you just said is actually something even everyone didn't understand for a long time, that a lot of C3 or most C3 PAOs are doing most of the audit actually virtually. So that's something that to make note of that I didn't understand even at one point. And then let's see, we had another gentleman ask here, is this only for companies going through CMMC level 2?
No, we have clients with CMMC level 1, and you don't even, for VCM, you don't even really have to meet CMMC requirements. We have clients that have to meet CI or working towards CIS compliance and other frameworks. So it's not just for CMMC. We can cover a wide range of compliance needs.
Excellent. All right. We're going to give about 30, 60 seconds here just to let anybody else submit. There were a few other questions that we had here, but they were very similar or duplicates of what we've covered here. So anyone else that has any questions before we do move on, I'll give you about another 60 seconds to get those submitted here. Just a few more moments. All right, we do have a few more that came in here. We had a question, how much is the assessment on the third year whenever you have to reassess?
A very good question. So essentially, it's a complete brand new assessment. So what you did in year 1 or whatever year you end up doing the certification, and then 3 years after that is when you're required to recertify, it's the entire process all over again. You're going to have to provide evidence, documentation, policies, SSP, all of that. It's essentially just, they're not intertwined. They're completely two different things.
All right. Another one came in here that said, do we know the deadline for compliance yet?
Sure. So all indication is that 48 CFR will likely be published in October. And the reason why is that everything that we've seen, all evidence, is submitted to the OMB. It has been submitted. It's up for review. And so at this point, it's really just waiting for that to happen, and then it will go into effect. So there's no indication that that's not going to happen. And so all industry experts for CMMC all agree that it's likely going to be October. And when that happens, you're going to start the phase 1 rollout. It is a period of 12 months. The phase 1 does involve at least level 2 self-assessments. There's a discretion of some contracts may include CMMC level 2 certification requirements. So that is possibly a thing. Some of the things you might see happen is if your prime contractor is starting to line up and make sure that their supply chain is secure, they may go ahead and start requiring you to get a CMMC level 2 certification earlier than that 12-month phase rollout. And then when phase 2 happens, that is 12 months after phase 1 begins, which is possibly the end of 2026. It just all really depends on when 48 CFR comes into effect. And definitely at least by then, you're going to start seeing CMMC's level 2 certification requirements.
Excellent. Yeah, we had a couple more come in as we were chatting here. What does VCM service include regarding after the assessment?
Essentially, we focus on continuous monitoring, making sure that you have assessment or evidence submitted or submit it to us for us to review, because every year you're still going to be required to do a self-assessment, and you really want verification that the implementation has not changed, that you're still meeting the full requirements, which is why we collect evidence every single year, and that will get you ready for your self-assessment, which is going to be required. So that's mainly what we help. And if there's any other compliance needs that we can help you guys with, again, it's just really keeping track of the CMC regulation changes, evolving guidance for control. There may be a different interpretation control, 6 months down the road, and those are things that we pass that knowledge on to you guys.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole lot that's going on even after you pass that assessment. Definitely good to be aware of. All right. It looks like we've got one more that looks unique here. No, two more that look unique here, and then that's all we've got. So if you've got any more, of course, keep them coming again, but we'll move on to these last two if no more come in. Jaclyn, what's the difference between FCI and CUI?
Sure. So FCI is just your contract information. It's federal contract information. There are 17 controls that you're required to abide by to protect the FCI. So it's a much lower control set. CUI is controlled unclassified information. So it's not classified information, but it's still data that the government deems you need to protect in a specific way. So that you do have to meet 110 controls, which is 320 objectives. So it's a much bigger effort on your part. But again, that's the two biggest differences. FCI is federal contract information, and then CUI, again, controlling unclassified information, and then the number of controls that you have to abide by.
All right. And then last one I have on here for now, looks like it's about the subcontractor supply chain. Let me rephrase it. Do our subcontractors and vendors also need to be compliant?
Okay, so there's several things that go into this. So if you have a cloud service provider and they handle CUI, they have to be FedRAMP moderate or equivalent. I mean, it's just written in the rule that way. If you have an external service provider that is providing security services to you guys, so an MSP or an MSP and MSSP does not necessarily have to have their own CMC Level 2 certification. However, the services they provide to you, those are going to be assessed as part of your assessment. They essentially become part of your assessment. During your CMC certification, the assessor is going to want to ask questions to the MSP and MSSP. They're going to want them to show evidence. So these are things you have to take into consideration. So do they have to get a CMC Level 2 certification? No. But like at Mad Security, we have hours, and as part of our certification, we use all of the services that we provide to our clients. And so we have proof that those services have met CMMC Level 2 requirements, which is greatly to your benefit because they've already passed the test, right? That we already have proof that they do meet the full requirements. So, and then other than that, subcontractors, if there is CUI that you are passing to your subcontractors, they have to protect that data in the same manner you do. If you're required to get in CMMC Level 2 certification, you have CUI you're passing to your subcontractors, they have to get a CMC Level 2 certification. And that's part of the flow down rules. That's just part of CMC. But yeah, essentially, I think I covered everything, but pretty much it.
Yeah, excellent. All right. That's all the questions I've got in the queue here. We'll give everybody just 10 more seconds or so. See if you're typing any more coming. All right. If no more questions are coming, I will go ahead and touch on just a couple more things, which are going to be, as I said, every month we do have a town hall. Thursday at 2 o'clock is the third Thursday at 2 o'clock every month, which are going to be the dates September the 18th, October the 16th, November the 20th, December the 18th. Thursday, time every. You're going to definitely want to come back and join us. We appreciate you coming to see this. The one in September on the 18th is actually going to be dry runs and mock assessments. What are they? What is the difference in the two? And why might you need one or both of them before your actual assessment? followed by October the 16th, which is going to be how some of the MAD security services align with your CMMC journey and why it matters. So again, please come back to join us every third Thursday at 2 p.m. Central Time. I'd like to thank you so much for joining Jaclyn and I today here at the MAD Security Town Hall webinar. CMMC is definitely here to stay, and staying compliant is how you keep doing business in let way so that you'll have confidence, you'll have clarity, and export support. By the way, you can email or use the booking link as well. Here, stay prepared, and we will see you in September. Have a great day, and thank you so much again.